the town was unable to gain the appropriate access to the property to have a good and fair look. All of that aside, the community cannot afford to purchase this property. If this passes tonight, it will have a very adverse impact on the budget process as we go forward. Next year's bonding is already at $700,000. One of the things we did was we had the finance director go through the bonds and go through the bonding schedule. He also recently refinanced some bonds, so we tried to get a clear and true picture for tonight's meeting so that we knew exactly where we stood. This will set us up for a very, very difficult budget process if it goes through. As prior speakers have said, we don't know what use it would have, if any. I think in many ways, it's difficult for us, and the board struggled with it because they don't make, as someone said at one of our meetings, they don't make land anymore. But we do have to set priorities as a board. We also wanted to put it before you, the community, so that you could voice your opinion on it. There will be, if it's not approved, we will receive a little bit of additional funding in terms of rollback taxes of $18,906. And anybody who knows me knows I round my numbers and drop my cents. We will also receive additional taxes if it's a 5-lot improved subdivision, additional taxes of $32,453. So this is Chapter 61A property, which is why we would get the rollback taxes. The proposed development is potentially under a Chapter 40B. It is the board's fervent hope that if this property is developed, that the developer will work closely with the community to develop it in an appropriate manner. But we really, four members of the board very strongly felt that we just could not, even though we'd love to do it, it hurts, but we cannot afford this based on the bonding schedule as we move forward and based on state aid and where we are looking towards next year's budget. Thank you.
This is a motion to bond and a motion to take by eminent domain, therefore requires a 2/3 vote. Chair sees several people standing. Let's take Mr. Mosseri first and then the gentleman at the microphone. First, Mr. Mosseri.
Bob Mosseri, 11 Susan Drive, and I'm speaking as the chairman of the Hillview Commission. The Hillview Commission voted 6-1 not to expend Hillview funds for the purchase of this property.
Gentleman at the microphone, please state your name and address, sir.
Eddie Wheeler, 1 Central Street.
Mr. Wheeler.
I believe that the townspeople, in order to make an informed decision on this kind of expenditures, there should be all the cards on the table. And I know of 4 other parcels in town that into the future we're going to have that opportunity to buy it. For the simple reason is because under the reduced taxes on that 61A, the town has the first refusal. But with those reduced taxes, as I stand here, we're paying for that right. So I think before anything is made to buy land, all the facts should be on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Next gentleman, please state your name and address, sir.
Thank you. Ken Tarr, 14 Winter Street, chairperson of the Land Utilization Committee. The Land Utilization Committee was pretty much asked to look into this property and was unable to do that because we weren't allowed to have a site visit. Through you, Mr. Moderator, if I could, to Town Council, if this article is voted down tonight, if for some reason the present purchase and sale agreement that is in effect does not hold up in the private sale, has the town forfeited its right at first refusal, or if there's a new purchase and sale in the future, do we get the right to revisit this?
Mr. Giorgio, if you would, please.
Mr. Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, if the purchase and sale agreement does not go through and the land remains in Chapter 61A classification, then any change in use or proposed sale of land in the future, the town would still have the right of first refusal.
Okay, so
and
this-
120 days to make the decision.
Right, so that just starts at new. Once we vote, if we vote this down tonight, we still have that in effect if something changes with the private sale.
Right, assuming that the land is not sold and taken out of 61A.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tar. Please state your name and address, ma'am.
Diana Jenkins, 226 Haverhill Street. This would be through you to the Community Planning Commission. Under 40B, how many low-income housing units could be placed in this parcel of land? Low income?
Mr. Pierce.
I think one of the things that would have happened if they had gotten a chance to do a site visit, we might have been able to do an accurate evaluation of how much upland area there is, because that really would control it. Even though under 40B, planning board would have no authority
Right.
to reject anything they brought in, but they could pack as many as they could possibly get in there, and the state would support them in that.
How many is,
I don't know how many usable acres there are there. Again, we kind of asked that question about how much usable space in ourselves, and we really don't have that answer. But if you had an acre and you put, you could put multiple family units on it, you could get, I don't know, 30 or 40 units in there without a problem. So you could really put a
you
lot
could
of housing
fit
in.
200 of units smashed in?
If there's enough space there.
Okay, one of my disagreements with the Board of Selectmen and not purchasing this land now is we need to look into the future and the bonding issue is important right now, but if you don't spend $1,250,000 now or to the next purchase and sale agreement, you will be building a 4th elementary school for $13 million. 200 affordable housing units will have 200 to 300 children in it. These houses don't come empty. And I think that's something that we need to look for in the future when these parcels, large parcels of land come up for purchase. The town of North Reading does not meet its requirement for low-income housing. Whoever develops this can smash as much as they can into this piece of property.
Mr. Pierce.
That is true if nothing was being done about it, but one of the things that the planning board has done to prevent that from happening to us is that we've applied for a grant that's available to all towns. It's a $30,000 grant, and it's to develop a housing master plan. We went to a seminar on it to learn exactly what we can do. We're not quite as vulnerable as you might think if you're a little proactive. And so we've become proactive. We've applied for the grant. We have some consultants on board to develop a housing master plan. And by doing that, that gives us the ability to stop anybody from forcing one of these upon us if it doesn't fit into the housing plan that we've developed. So by virtue of the fact that we're in the process of doing that, we pretty much protected ourselves to some extent. So we're in the process of trying to solve that problem right now so that kind of thing doesn't happen. The danger is that if we develop a plan that doesn't get approved, I suppose there could be a loophole there. But I think if you're in the process, if you're in the plan, they give you that benefit.
But how long is it going to take your plan to approve? If this property is sold and they submit the 40B to the state, which we have no control over, then the units will be built.
But it's not quite that. It's a little more difficult for them once we get into the program.
But we're not in the program.
Well, yeah, we are. We've already gone through. We already have the consultant, and we've already done the applied. So we are working that. It takes them a little longer to get something like that approved too. But as long as we, follow through with what we're doing here, it's unlikely we'd get something forced on us. It doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. If we don't, our plan has to provide the proper amount of housing. But what I was going to say is we don't have to reinvent this plan, though. there are many towns around us, towns like Rowley that have done an excellent job with this, and so we'll model after towns that have successfully put a plan forward. It's not like we have to spend a lot of time and energy to reinvent this. It's something that we will borrow from other towns, successful models for this plan.
So in
I
your
think we've
opinion,
heard
you
enough
have no
of the-
fear of...
Ms. Jenkins, I'm sorry, but we have heard enough on this issue. I think that Mr. Simons has been standing there patiently waiting, and he will now tell us his name and address.
Jeff Simons, 31 Hickory Lane. Actually, a related point. Couple of questions. One is Mr. Murphy's in conversation at the moment. I'll ask the second question first. Was one of the municipal uses considered for this piece of property for the town to do some sort of low-income, moderate-income housing? I'd like some sort of a discussion, or if you could please summarize the discussion along those lines, and then maybe back to Warren and the CPC. You know, just what if you could just embellish on what the municipal plans are right now to comply with requirements that we provide such housing. And Mr. Murphy, if you could just re-explain a little bit without using the tax code lingo for those of us who don't quite understand the tax characterization of the present piece of property and what's being proposed. Could you just sort of restate your recommendation and talk about how the land is characterized now, what kind of taxes are being paid on this now, and what you had thought about and what it appears that everyone seems to know is being proposed for this piece of property, kind of cutting through some of that code lingo. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy.
Okay, there's a lot of questions there, so I'll try to get them all, and if I don't, I'm sure Jeff will correct me. But in terms of just to the final comment, everybody seems to know what's being proposed here. I have spoken to the purchaser myself, and I don't think that individual knows with certainty. I mean, it could just be that the individual develops 5 house lots on the entire parcel. I don't think that that's yet known. In terms of how the property is classified today, it's classified as farmland under Chapter 61A of Mass General Law, which allows it to receive a reduced tax rate. So a rate different than other properties than residential properties in the community. So the assessed value in 2002 is and I hope I have all the right numbers in front of me, is 164.6. That's based on the Chapter 61A. The market value as determined by the assessor's office, and again that's determined by the assessor's office, so was $680,000, and that was a recent evaluation that he was requested to do very recently. If the property is sold as is and used as is, just for comparative purposes, it would be $4,758 in additional taxes. If a 5-lot subdivision is put in there, as for instance, it would be, the taxes would be $32,453. So going back to the first tax number I threw out, which was $18,000, that's a one-time windfall, because what happens is when it goes from 61A to another use, there's a rollback feature. So the taxes get rolled back, so the seller is required to pay that rollback amount. Again, the purchase price is $1,250,000, which would cost the town $103,000 if we bonded it for 15 years and $82,000 if we bonded it. These are assuming current bond rates. If we bonded it for 20 years, the discussion, no one department or group stepped forward to really lay claim or fight for it. There was a great discussion. We did hold a public hearing on it. There was some discussion about potentially the town purchasing it and then forming a committee, which was part of the motion. The very long motion that I read would have been to form a committee, and it would have been that committee's charge to come up with what that municipal use would be. I think the